Okay, so good morning. My discussion for today is about Module 4, Approaches of Crime. First, we have the so-called subjective approaches. It deals mainly on the biological explanation of crimes, focus on the forms of abnormalities that exist in the individual criminal before, during, and after the commission of crime. So, subjective approach, okay, it deals mainly in biological explanation of crimes. Nakafocus din siya on the abnormalities that exist in the individual criminal before or during and after the commission of the crime. So, nakafocus siya doon sa abnormalities ng isang individual o doon sa kriminal bago mangyari yung krimen, pag natapos na yung krimen, okay, or habang ginagawa yung krimen, yung mga abnormalities na meron sila. So, yun ang tinatawag nating subjective approach. So, we have different kinds of subjective approach. First, we have an anthropological approach. The study on the physical characteristics of an individual. Because it's anthropological anthropology. Physical. Physical ang pinag-aaralan dyan. Offender with non-offenders in the attempt to discover differences covering criminal behavior. Ano ba ang pinagkaiba ng ano ba yung pagkakaiba nila sa physical sa mga non-criminals and criminals? Yan ang tinatawag nating anthropological approach. Next, we have the so-called medical approach. The application of medical examinations on the individual criminal explain the mental and physical condition of the individual prior and after the commission of the crime. Okay, so medical examination of the individual criminal explain his or her mental and physical condition prior and after the commission of the crime. Yan naman po yung sa medical approach natin. Next, we have the so-called biological approach. The evaluation of genetic influences to criminal behavior. It is noted that heredity is one force, okay, para gumawa yung tao ng krimen or para maging kriminal. So, biological ang pinag-uusapan natin dito is heredity or inheritance. Nai-inherit ba niya? Okay? Yung, or nakakakuha ba siya ng mga traits ng nanay or tatay niya? So, this is so we call biological approach. Next, we have physiological approach. The study on the nature of human being concerning his physical needs in order satisfy his wants. It explains that the deprivation of the physical body on the basic needs is an important determiner of the commission of the crime. Physiological, kung narinig niyo na yung Maslow hierarchy, okay, ang nasa pinakababa or pinakauna is yung physiological needs, the basic needs that we need. Okay, like food, shelter, tubig, okay, yan yung mga basic needs natin. Okay? Pero sabi dito, the study on the nature of human being concerning his physical needs in order to satisfy his want, para masatisfy kung ano yung gusto niya. Okay? Yun yung tinatawag nating physiological approach. Next, we have the so-called psychiatric approach. The explanation of crime through diagnosis of mental disease as the cause of the criminal behavior. Psychiatric, okay, mental. May sakit ba siya sa pag-iisip para, or yun yung maging rason para makagawa siya ng crime or maging mag-iba yung behavior niya. So, yan yung sa psychiatric approach natin. Next, we have psychoanalytical approach. The explanation based on the Freudian theory which traces behavior and deviation of the repression of the basic drives. kung narinig nyo na yung kung kilala nyo si Sigmund Freud, okay, siya yung nakagawa ng tinatawag nating Freudian theory, psychoanalytic approach. Okay? Psychoanalytic approach, okay, we will discuss further, okay, in our next module. Next, we have objective approach. So, meron na tayong subjective approach. Dito naman tayo sa objective approaches. It deals on the study of groups, social processes, and institution as influences to behavior. So, yan yung sa objective approach, ito naman yung pinag-aaralan natin, the groups, social processes, and institution na nakaka-impluwensya sa ating behavior. Okay, first, we have geographic approach. This approach considers topography, natural resources, geographical location, and climate lead an individual to commit crime. Siyempre, sa mga matataas na lugar, ano ba yung mga karaniwang nangyayari? Dito sa baba, ano ba yung mga karaniwang nangyayari? Pag summer season ba? Or kapag summer na ba, ano ba yung mga nangyayari? And also in rainy season, di ba? Climate, sabi nga natin, habang nagbabago-bago yung climate natin, okay, we have iba't iba din yung mga crimes na nagagawa ng tao. Okay? Next, we have ecological approach. It is concerned with the biotic grouping of men resulting to migration, competition, social discrimination, division of labor, and social conflict as a factors to crime. So, ecological naman, the grouping of men resulting to migration. Okay? So, syempre, hindi mo maiiwasang mag-compete. Also, social discrimination. Okay? Social discrimination, alam na natin yan kung anong ibig sabihin. Kasi, hindi naman lingid sa atin na here in the Philippines, okay, marami nang nadi-discriminate. And gender, also gender preferences. Okay? So, dyan, discrimination na yan. Next, we have economic approach. It deals with the explanation of crime concerning financial security, of inadequacy, and other necessities to support life as factors to criminality. So, financial naman po ang economic. Okay, from the word itself, economic, financial security of inadequacy. Next, we have the so-called socio-cultural approach. Those that focus of institution, economic, financial, education, political, and religious influence to crime. Yan yung mga socio-cultural natin. Okay? Naka-focus lang siya sa mga institutions or institutes, economic, financial, education, and political, and also religious. Next, we have the so-called contemporary approaches. This approach is focused on the psychoanalytical, psychiatric, and sociological explanation of crime in an integrated theory, an explanatory perspective that merges concepts drawn from different sources. So, yan naman po yung tinatawag nating contemporary approach. Focus on psychoanalytical, psychiatric, and sociological explanation of crime in integrated theory. So, ano ba yung mga factors affecting development and existence of crimes and criminality? So, sabi ko kanina, one is geographical factors, biological factors, psychoanalytical and psychiatric factors, sociological factors, and other criminogenic factors. Yan yung mga nakaka-apekto development and existence of crimes and criminalities. Next, we have the so-called the geographical factors. So, doon tayo sa una, geographical factors. Earlier criminologists correlated climate, humidity, wind velocity, atmosphere, pressure, rainfall, nature of soil and other geographical factors to the existence and development of crimes and criminality. So, nakasali pala yan or related pala yung mga climate natin, humidity, even wind velocity, the atmosphere, okay? So, kasali pala yan kaya tayo nakakagawa ng krimen or crime. First, we have the so-called North and South Pole. According to Kittilet, Thermic law of delinquency, crimes against person predominate in the South Pole and during warm season, while crimes against property predominate in the North Pole and cold countries. So, crimes against person, nangyayari yan sa South Pole or doon sa tinatawag nating warm, okay, yung mainit, kung saan mainit yung season nila. And then sa North Pole naman, dahil malamig nga, okay, dahil nga ang sabi ng mga bata, nandun si Santa Claus, okay, doon naman nangyayari yung crimes against property. Crimes against property like pagnanakaw, okay, so yan yung mga pwedeng mangyari sa mga malalamig na lugar or malalamig na bansa. Yan yung mga pwedeng mangyaring krimen. Next, we have approach to the equator. According to Montesic, okay, Spirit of Laws in 1748, criminal in proportion as one approach the equator and drunken increases as one approach the north and the south. So, same lang naman. Okay? Same as the north and south pole. Ang pinagkaiba lang, sabi dito, yung mga malapit sa equator, okay, mas, or they have increases as one approach the north and south pole. Next, we have the so-called season of the year. Crimes against persons are more in summer. Kagaya nga dun sa South and North Pole natin. Okay, crimes against persons are more in summer than in rainy season. While crimes against properties are more during rainy season. Climatic conditions directly affects one's irritability and causes criminality. Same lang sila ng North and South Pole. Next, we have the so-called soil formation. More crimes of violence are recorded in fertile level lands than in hilly, rugged terrain. There are more congregations of people and there is more irritation. There is more incidents of rape in level district. Okay? So, sabi dito, more crimes of violence are recorded doon sa mga lands, kagaya doon sa mga matataas na lugar. Okay? And more congregation of people and there is more irritation or there is more incidents of rape in level district naman. So, yan naman yung pagkakaiba naman. Soil formation naman daw yan. So, doon sa mga bulubundukin and also here, dito sa baba. Next, we have the month of the year. This is more incidents of violent crimes during warm months from April up to July, having its peak in May. This is due to festivals, syempre, crimes against person, excursions, picnics, and other sorts of festivities, wherein people are more likely, parang mas alive sila. Okay, mas lumalabas sila. Because it's summer, warm months, April to July. Okay? Pero kapag naman na magmula na December to January, ayan naman na, malalamig na, so crimes against property naman na ang pwedeng mangyari doon. So pare-pareho lang sila. Next, temperature. According to Dexter, the number of arrests increases quiet regularly with the increase of temperature. The increase of temperature affects the emotional state of the individual and leads to fighting. The influence of temperature upon females is greater than male. So, kapag temperature naman, once na tumaas daw, or mas nai-influensyahan ng temperature ang females kaysa sa males. Okay? So, kasali rin pala yan sa mga pwedeng maging rason or makaapekto sa paggawa ng krimen. Next, we have humidity and atmosphere pressure. According to survey, large numbers of assaults are to be found correlated with low humidity and a small number with high humidity. It was explained that low and high humidity are both vitality and emotionally depressing to the individual. Okay, humidity and atmosphere pressure. Next, we have the so-called wind velocity. Under the same study, it was explained that during high wind, okay, so during high wind, okay, arrests were less. It may be due to the presence of more carbon dioxide and the atmosphere that lessen the vitality of men to commit violence. So, kapag meron tayong presence of carbon dioxide, okay, mas nalilesen yung vitality of men to commit violence. Next, we have the so-called biological factors. Biological factors, man as a living organism has been the object of several studies which has the purpose of determining the causes of crimes. First, we have the so-called physiognomy. This is the study of the relationship between the facial features and human conduct of a person in relation to his crimes. This study was used by Beccaria in 1764 and Lavater in 1775, wherein they both stated that the way to discover the character of a person is by, first, observation of physical appearance, 2, measurement of the outside appearance. So, physiognomy is all about facial features of human, yung physical features ng isang tao. Okay? Both claim that bald men, bearded women, and shifty eyes, okay, and arrogant nose are inclination to commit crimes. So, sila daw po, okay, yung mga nakakakommit ng crimes. Yung bald men, bearded women, arrogant nose, sila daw yung mga nakakakommit ng krimen. Next, we have the so-called Chronology or Criminology. This is the study of the external formation of the skull that indicates the conformation of the brain and the development of its various parts in relation to behavior of the criminal. Franz Joseph Christoph Ispersem, so na-discuss ko yan dun sa mga previous modules natin, claim in his study that the shape of the head of the criminals differs from that of non-criminals. The theory, however, was found without scientific basis. So, criminology or criminology, yan yung pag-aaral about the formation of the skull. Okay, so sabi ko nga, criminology or criminology, yan yung study, okay, for the formation of the skull. Para ma-indicate nila, okay, magkaiba daw kasi yung shape ng head ng criminal to non-criminal. And that was the study of Franz Joseph Christoph Ispersem. Next is study of physical defects and handicap in relation to crimes. Leaders of notorious criminal groups are usually nicknamed in accordance with their physical defects and handicap. Funny words like Dorong Pilay, Densyong Unano, and many more. So, physical defects and handicaps, okay, marami pa rin silang kayang gawin. Even if they have physical defects. Next, study of heredity as causes of crimes. First, the common household expression is expression like it is in the blood and like father like son are usually heard and said whenever there are several members in the family are criminals. Accordingly, hereditary transmits single traits and characteristics from parents to offspring. Is used to determine the nature of the parents and nature of their crime. So, sabi ko nga, in our previous discussion na paliwanag ko yan about heredity. Tama naman. Diba? Palagi nating sinasabi, like father, like son, like mother, like daughter, it is in the blood. Okay? So, yan yung mga, or study and causes of crime. Heredity as causes of crime. Sorry. Okay? So, kapag ka ba criminal ang nanay at tatay mo, pwede bang maging criminal ka na din? Pwede bang ma-adapt mo yun? Yes, pwedeng ma-adapt. Okay? Kasi yun, dun ka lumaki. Yun yung kinamulatan mo, na criminal yung nanay at tatay mo. So, paglaki mo, yun din ang gagawin mo. Okay? Next, some proofs to show the role of heredity in the development of criminality. Okay? First, study of Kalikak family tree. So, di ba, meron akong pina-activity sa inyo na you need to illustrate or draw your family tree, including the roots, yung kalululuhan nyo hanggang sa pinaka presence ngayon, kung sino ba yung pinakabago sa members ng family nyo. Okay, so first, we have Study of Kalikak Family Tree by Goddard. Martin Kalikak was a soldier of the American Revolutionary War, and while stationed in a small village, he met and had illicit relations with a feeble-minded girl. About 489 descendants from this lineage were traced, which included, 143 feeble-minded and only 46 were normal. 36 were illegitimate, 3 were epileptics, 3 criminals, 3 kept brothels, and 82 died in infancy. So, 489 descendants. So, yan. Yung 142 doon, naging feeble-minded. Dahil nga yung kinarelasyon niya is isang feeble-minded girl. Next, yung susunod na 46, normal. 36 were illegitimate, 3 were epileptics, may sakit. 3 is criminals, yung tatlo din, keep in brothels, at yung 82 namatay bago pa sila ipinanganak. So, yan yung study, sa Kalikak family tree. Yan yung pinag-alaran ni Goddard. Next, we have Study of Duke family tree by Dugdale and Stabrook. The Duke family consisted of 6 girls, some of whom were illegitimate. One of the 6 sisters, Margaret Ada Duke, take note, Margaret Ada Duke was known as the mother of criminals. Dugdale traced the 1,200 descendants for 75 years from its origin and found 280 as paupers, 140 criminals, 60 habitual thieves, 300 infants prematurely born, 7 murderers, 50 prostitutes, 440 contaminated with sexual diseases, and 30 were prosecuted for bastardy. Okay? So, kung titignan mo yung Duke family and Kalikak family, maniniwala tayo na kung ano yung puno, siya rin yung bunga. Okay? Because of these descendants na meron sila. Okay? Kasi yung sa una, sa Kalikak, ang si Martin Kalikak, ang nakarelasyon niyang babae is a female feeble-minded girl. May sakit. Okay? May sakit, sabi natin may sakit siya sa pag-iisip. Okay? So, yun yung, kapag ititrace nila yung family tree nila, yun yung mga nangyari. Okay? And also, here in Duke family tree, ganun din. Marami din ang naging kriminal. Meron pang naging prostitutes. Ang dami ng 440 contaminated with sexual diseases. Okay? So, yan yon sa Duke family naman. Next, we have Study of Sir Jonathan Edwards family tree. Sir Jonathan Edward was a famous preacher during the colonial period. When his family tree was traced, none, wala sa mga descendants niya was to be found to be criminal. On the other hand, many became President of the United States, okay, governor, members of the Supreme Court, and famous preachers and teachers, okay. So kung titignan mo, dahil nga si Sir Jonathan Edward is a famous preacher, okay, wala siyang ginawang masama, okay. So kung ititrace mo yung family tree nila, okay, lahat, okay, or wala sa naging descendants niya ang naging kriminal. So minsan maniniwala ka na lang na tama nga yung kasabihan. Okay, yung mga sinasabi natin, like father, like son, di ba? It is in the blood, okay? So, pero ngayon, sabi nila, kahit naman ganun yung magulang mo or yung mga nakikita mo sa paligid, nasa sayo pa din naman. Okay? Nasa sayo pa din naman kung gagawin mo yon, dahil as a person, you know what is right and wrong. Okay? So, nasa sayo na yon. Okay? Ito lang naman yung mga proof. Okay? Na pwedeng ganun yung mangyari. So, next, let's go now to the psychoanalytic and psychiatric factor. Mental disturbances as a causes of crimes. The following are cases of mental disturbances which are sometimes the causes of criminality and the development of criminal behavior. First, we have the so-called mental deficiency, a condition of arrested or incomplete development of the mind existing before the age of 18, whether arising from inherent causes or induced by disease or injury. Mental deficiency persons are prone to commit damage to and unnatural sex offenses. They may commit violent crimes and definitely not crimes involving the use of mentality. So, yan. Kapag may mental deficiency ka, okay, pwedeng makagawa ka ng mga krimen. Okay? And also, mentally deficient persons are prone to commit damage and unnatural sex offenses. Next, let's go now to classifications of mental deficiency. We have idiots. Una, we have idiots, persons whose case there exists mental defectiveness of such a degree that they are unable to guard themselves against common physical dangers. Their mentality or yung pag-iisip nila is compared to a 2-year-old person. Okay? Even if they are 24 years old, 25, 26, or 30 years old, yung pag-iisip nila is a 2-year-old person pa din. Next, imbeciles. Persons in whose case exists mental defectiveness which thought not amounting to idiocy is yet so pronounced that they are incapable of managing themselves of their affairs. Their mentality is like a child of 2 to 7 years old. Ayan naman yung pagkakaiba. Kapag idiots, 2 years old. Kapag imbeciles naman, 2 to 7 years old. Next, we have the so-called feeble-minded person. So, ito yung tinalakay natin. Those in whose case there exists mental defectiveness which thought not amounting to imbecility is yet so pronounced that they require care. Kailangan nila ng pag-aalaga, supervision, and control for their own or for the protection of others. Or in the case of children, they appear to be permanently, take note, permanently incapable by reason of such defectiveness or receiving proper benefit from the instruction in ordinary school. So, kailangan nila ng care, supervision, and control, yung mga feeble-minded persons natin. Next, we have the so-called moral defectiveness. Persons wherein mental defect exists coupled with strong, vicious, or criminal propensities and who require care, also like feeble-minded persons, supervision and control for their own or for the protection of others. So, kailangan nilang isupervise ang yung may mga moral defectiveness para na rin sa proteksyon ng ibang tao. Okay? Next, we have the so-called schizophrenia. Okay, schizophrenia. This is sometimes called dementia precox. Okay, so na-discuss ko na rin yan doon sa previous module natin. I think if I'm not mistaken, is Module 1, which is a form of psychosis characterized by thinking disturbance and regression to a more relatively impaired and intellectual functions are well preserved, the personal appearance is dilapidated, and the patient is liable to impulsive acts destructively and may commit suicide. Okay? So, yan lang din naman yun. Sabi ko nga, na-discuss ko na yan kung ano ang schizophrenia or yung tinatawag nating dementia precox. So, more relatively impaired with intellectual function siya sa pag-iisip. Next, we have compulsive neurosis. This is the uncontrollable or irresistible impulse to do something. There may be an active desire to resist the irrational behavior, but prevented by the unconscious motives to act out his difficulty or to suffer miserable in his fear. So, ayan naman po ang compulsive neurosis. Uncontrollable or irresistible impulse to do something. Hindi niya mapigilan yung sarili niya para gawin yung gusto niya or gawin yung kaya niyang gawin. Okay? Uncontrollable, irresistible. So, yun ang tinatawag nating compulsive neurosis. Next, forms of compulsive neurosis. So, these are the forms. First, we have pyromania, compulsive desire to set fire. Ayan yung mga tao, or yan yung mga taong hindi nila mapigilan yung sarili nila na mag-set ng fire. Ang tawag sa kanila, pyromania. Next, we have homicidal compulsion, the irresistible urge to kill somebody. Okay? Kleptomania, alam nyo na yan, the compulsive desire to steal or pathologically stealing. Next, we have the so-called dipsomania. Yung mga hindi nila makontrol yung pag-inom nila, the compulsive desire to drink alcohol. Boys, dipsomania ang tawag sa mga yan. Next, we have the psychopathic personality. This is the most important cause of criminality among youthful offenders and habitual criminals. It is characterized by infantile level of response, lack of conscience, deficient feeling of affection to others, and aggression to environment and other people. Okay, dito naman sa psychopathic personality natin, sabi nga dito, it is characterized by infantile level of response, lack of conscience, walang konsensya, deficient feeling of affection to others, wala silang pakialam kung anong nararamdaman ng iba, and aggression to environment and other people. Next, we have the so-called epilepsy. This is a condition characterized by convulsive seizures and tendency to mental deterioration. The seizure may be extreme loss of consciousness during the attack of the person become muscularly rigid, respiration ceases, froth on the mouth, and tongue may be bitter. Okay? So, alam niyo naman na yung tinatawag nating epilepsy. Okay? Kung meron kayong mga kilalang epilepsy, so yan yung mga, nagkakaroon kasi sila ng seizure. Okay? Kasi, di ba sabi nila ang first aid daw kapag nakakita ka ng nag-epilepsy nito is lalagyan mo siya ng kutsara doon sa bunganga niya. No. Okay? Wag po natin gawin yun. Hindi po yun nakakatulong. Okay? So, yan. This is the so-called epilepsy. Next, types of epilepsy. So, meron tayong types of epilepsy. We have grand mal, petit mal, and Jacksonian type. Grand mal, there is a complete loss of consciousness and general construction or contraction of the muscle. Okay, so complete loss of consciousness kapag grand mal. Kapag petit mal naman, mild or complete loss of consciousness and contraction of muscle. So, mild lang, pero complete pa din ng loss of consciousness niya and also contraction of muscle. And Jacksonian type, localized contraction of muscles with or without loss of consciousness. So, yan ang pagkakaiba ng grand mal, petit mal, and Jacksonian type, the types of epilepsy. So, yan lang naman yung mga types of epilepsy. Next, we have the so-called alcoholism. This is a form of vice causing mental disturbance. It is a condition wherein a person is under the influence of intoxicating liquor or alcohol. His physical condition and behavior has been modified to a certain extent by the effects of alcohol. This causes the habitual drunkard to commit violence, crime, and delinquency to minors. Yes, nangyayari yan, lalo na kapag yung alak is nilagay nila sa, okay, or napunta sa utak nila, 'di ba? Sabi nila, wag pong ilagay ang alak sa utak, dapat sa tiyan para hindi kayo nagkakagulo. Okay? Once kasi na nakainom kayo or nasobrahan yung pag-inom nyo, yan ang nangyayari. Okay? It causes habitual drunkard to commit violence. Okay? Tapos sasabihin niya, hindi ko alam na nangyari yan or hindi ko alam na ginawa ko pala yan sa'yo. Okay? Next, we have the so-called drug addiction. This is another form of vice which causes strong mental disturbance. It is the state of periodic of chronic intoxication produced by the consumption of natural or synthetic drugs. Natural drugs is that we call marijuana. In other country that was legalized, here in Philippines, it is not legalized para gamitin. Sa ibang bansa kasi hindi sila maabuso. Tayo na Pilipino, maabuso tayo. Okay? And also synthetic drugs like shabu, cocaine, heroin, and the so we called party drugs. Okay? So, yan naman sa drug addiction natin. So, that was the last slide for my module 4 discussion. So, thank you. And sabi ko nga and also this is one of your coverage for your exam. So thank you and have a blessed day.